Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the LCMHC Mystic Musings. And I would like to say I'm sorry March got away from me, but here we are in lovely April. And so, if you're new to this corner of space, welcome, welcome. I'm Christine Frisebo, your licensed clinical therapist, hypnotherapist, energy and Jungian shamanic practitioner, yoga instructor, mystic mother, and a lifelong seeker of the alchemy between psychology and spirituality. And I am also always your LCMHC mystic. Today's episode is all about minimizing, and I wrote a blog on it that I absolutely did post in March. Just didn't get this podcast out. So, thinking about minimizing and the quiet, often unnoticed way we downplay our own experiences, our emotions, and needs. And I am really excited to share these musings with you today. So, as always, this podcast exists to create a sacred corner of the world where mind and mystery sit together, where healing becomes multidimensional, and where your inner world is honored as deeply as your outer world. My hope is that each time you listen, you feel a little more seen and a little more connected and gently reminded that you are everything and nothing less. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's dive in. Okay, so I'm going to just start off strong, and I'm immediately asking you right now, take a moment. I want you to just sit with your awareness of yourself. Where are you? What are you doing? And how are you feeling? Like the whole shebang. Just gently reflect for a moment here. I'm going to ask you this question, okay? So as you're reflecting and just taking a moment to be very present and aware of where you are, what have you already minimized today? What have you minimized this week? Something you brushed off, something you told yourself wasn't a big deal, something that you didn't give yourself permission to feel and sit with. You might have told yourself, yeah, get over it, just move on. And I just want you to notice. So take a moment now, really sit with your awareness and think about, how did I minimize myself this week and today? And notice what comes up in your body when you hear the word minimizing. Do you notice any resistance, agreement, discomfort, relief? Like, what are you noticing? So there's no changing right now, only awareness and bringing this cognizant feelings and thoughts around minimizing and how it relates to yourself. So just focus. Bet you didn't think you were getting a therapist session this morning or afternoon or evening, whenever you're listening to me rambling here. But okay, yeah. So seriously, because this is a really important topic, and minimizing is something that I hear probably at least once, if not, I'm being gracious, but I probably hear it hundreds of times, like throughout my week, especially as a therapist. I hear things like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Other people's have it worse. I'm probably overreacting. I shouldn't complain. Or, this one where I have an individual, or, if this might relate to you, where you've been through some shit. And then you end up saying things like, well, I'm alive, so I shouldn't complain. And you minimize what you go through. It's like, hey, can we just acknowledge you as an individual, as a very tired, resilient individual, that we shouldn't shame ourselves, and that we can recognize that the shit we've been through, it happened, and it's not small. Okay. And we'll get more into like talking about other things to this. So if you're feeling reactive to anything I'm saying right now, good. I want you to sit with it. I want you to think about what comes up. So almost every time I hear someone say stuff like this, I also react. And so whether I'm being cognizant and I call it out like, hey, I think you're minimizing the situation. I think you're making it a lot smaller. Or sometimes I might not notice that my client is minimizing and my own body reacts and it calls me out because you know what? Hey, I am human too. Like I often minimize myself as well. So this is like a systemic, a cultural, like this is just something that is like happens all the time. And so just kind of going into some evidence clinical part of this, I'm going to read you a definition. Minimizing. Minimizing is a cognitive and emotional process where we downplay the significance of our own experiences, feelings, needs, or wounds. So that's a definition right there. So it's not a flaw, but it's a strategy. And it's something that the nervous system does to help us manage what might otherwise feel really overwhelming. So if something feels really big and you don't want to hold on to it, the mind, so intelligent, the subconscious, all of the systems, the nervous system, it finds a way to make whatever that big thing is smaller. It will minimize it. So minimizing is something we naturally do, but I'm going to get into how it can not be helpful and how we can adjust that. So this happened last month. So in the month of March, I was talking with one of my clients and we were talking about minimizing and overthinking. And they said, Christine, I could literally overthink things down to a pebble. I don't know if you could hear me snap, but oh my gosh, they said that. And I was like, okay. And a metaphor came to my brain because I talk in metaphors all the time. And so this is what came out of me. I said, what if you minimize something down to a pebble, not to dismiss it, but so you could hold it and understand it better and work with it better. Instead of like shrinking it down to a pebble and then dismissing it and making it feel insignificant, like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. Like I should just like let it go. You minimize the experience and like, okay, we minimize the experience down to where we can hold it, but that's not going to change how it made you feel. It's not going to change like the energetic blueprint. So that's what I'm going to use as the example. It's the energetic blueprint. So sure, we can shrink it down because sometimes an experience, an event, an emotion, something really big is a flippin' mountain or a boulder. It's way too heavy. It is all consuming. You cannot carry it all at once. So yeah, we minimize it in a sense to help us get back up and keep going. But this is the part where I want us to be mindful. So just because we've made it small enough to hold, it does not mean that it energetically is less. So it still has that energy of that boulder, that mountain. And when we get stuck, it's because we shrink the story and then we don't explore the impact of it. And we unintentionally then minimize our own self. So we're going to do another little practice here. So I'd like for you, if you're in the space to do so, I want you to close your eyes. If you're obviously driving, please don't. Just you can keep on listening. But if you are in a place where you can close your eyes and take a moment, that's what I want you to do. And I want you to take a nice, slow breath in through your nose. And then exhale gently through your mouth. And again, inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, and find that rhythmic breathing for a minute. And imagine placing something in your hand that looks like a small pebble. And this pebble represents something in your life, whether in your past or recently, that you may have told yourself, not that big of a deal, wasn't that bad. But energetically, it didn't resonate with those words. And just notice it. No judgment here. And hold this pebble. And gently acknowledge that it came from something bigger. A boulder, perhaps. An experience that carried a lot more weight. And you don't have to make it bigger than what it is as a pebble. In fact, I would suggest you don't. But you also don't have to make it smaller. You can allow it to exist. And quietly in your mind, tell yourself, and this moment, this pebble, this really actually did affect me. And I'm allowed to feel how that affected me. It doesn't mean that it derailed me. It doesn't mean that I am broken. It just means that this was a big event. And energetically, it was a lot. And I'm allowed to feel what comes with it. Even though I am my own alchemist and I am strong and I can hold things, but I know I can bring it down to a manageable size. And notice your body as you're saying this to yourself. Does anything soften, even if just a little bit? And take another nice, slow breath in and exhale. And then you can gently return to this moment. And as you come out of this visualization, just thinking about what that pebble was for you. What did you realize you'd been holding? Did anything shift? And you can ask yourself, were you minimizing the experience or minimizing yourself? And there's no right answer. We're just bringing awareness. And if I could implore some compassion. So when we begin to notice this, we start to understand something deeper about how minimizing isn't random. We've learned to do this. It's an adaptive strategy. And if you grew up in an environment where your emotions weren't safe or seen, or if they were dismissed, so if we get into attachment styles, this is like very, very much an attachment topic. But your nervous system learned quickly that if you felt really deeply, it was not safe. So instead of saying, I was hurt, the system will say, not big of a deal. Instead of acknowledging the fear, the mind says, oh, I'm just being dramatic. So again, intelligent system. We have such an intelligent system. And so this is not something that we do just at an individual base. This is also very generational. So we could spend probably a whole podcast talking about generations and how generations practice minimization and like why minimization was necessary. So and it's different. Okay, so when we zoom out even more, we can begin to see how minimizing was shaped in the generations before us too. So I want to continue on this topic. So because every generation learned how to survive within the world they were given. And we know that a baby boomer experienced the world very differently than a Gen Xer or a millennial. And so just like, yeah, so like looking at even the baby boomers, right? So many of them were raised by parents who lived through war, economic instability, and very real, very tangible survival stress, and emotions weren't centered, but survival was. There was often this unspoken message of keep going, be strong, don't fall apart. And minimizing wasn't just common, it was necessary. So, because when life demands that function, there isn't space to feel. And so, think about, your grandparents or your parents, who I'm going to make the assumption are within that baby boomer generation, and just think about how they interact with you on an emotional level or when dealing with stress and things like that. And so then moving into like Gen Xers, a generation that in many ways learned independence, basically like right out the womb, often navigate emotional experience more on their own. And sometimes in homes where both parents were working or where emotional conversations weren't the norm, there can be this tone of figure it out, handle it, I'm fine, you're fine. And again, minimizing shows up not as cruelty, but as adaptation and a way to self regulate without external support. And then we come to the millennials. And I am a elder millennial, a generation that began to have more access to conversations about mental health. Not so much, it's more prevalent in today's generations, but we were starting to have more conversations about it. There was more language, there was more awareness coming through, but it's a generation also raised by others who were taught to be taught minimizing. So what happens is something really interesting. Minimizing, it doesn't disappear, and it's not going to, because I do think that if I could make a guess or hypothesis, minimizing is like a survival technique that we've created. But we can see when we zoom out and look at these different generations how minimizing evolves, and how as we develop in society and technology and things like that, it evolves and it becomes more internal, more cognitive, and we start creating those statements. So, and I know that I'm kind of repeating myself here a lot, but it's just like those statements. I know this, so this is what I hear a lot now too, which is great. But I know this impacted me, but other people had it worse. It's that second part, but other people had it worse. And then you have the I shouldn't feel this way. I'm just overthinking. So there's awareness, but still hesitation to fully validate the experience. So nowadays, when we look at our Gen Zers, we're seeing a shift. There's more openness, there's more emotional language happening. There's more willingness to name things as they are. But even here, you can always still see an imprint, because generational patterns don't disappear. They soften, they reshape, they echo. And culturally, this all makes sense, right? So for a long time, productivity was prioritized over presence. I know that resonates with you guys, especially my millennials and Gen Xers. I know when I say productivity prioritized over presence, you're like, yep. So strength was defined as endurance, not how you expressed yourself. And emotional experiences were often seen as something to manage quietly or move past quickly, right? When I say that, I instantly think of my tenacious, sassy, my little 4-year-old. She is the most beautiful little monster incarnate, that I love her so much. And now my ADHD brain just went instantly to Little Monsters with young Ben Savage, and that movie was great. If you have not watched it, please go. Monsters are wonderful. Anyway, so I think about her, and I think about how she right now is in the throes of just emotional expression, and it can be really hard sometimes. And so I'm going to be open, like, so I obviously am a therapist, so I understand attachment style. So I'm going to know my attachment style, and my attachment style is avoidant dismissive. And so my child has been teaching me. I wish you guys could see my hand motions. I'm like talking with my hands. I'm like, oh yeah, you got to listen to this. So she has taught me, like, I have to reshape how I show up in my attachment style. So it's like I'm allowing her to have these big emotions, like the tantrums, like, and I'm trying to navigate how I can help her without like her feeling like she needs to minimize things. So trying to teach her how to take what she feels is a fucking mountain and help her, like, bring it down to a pebble so she can hold on to it and, like, be able to just, like, oh, okay, like, this is what this is. And it's hard, especially when you're a toddler. And so and again, this is me just making generalized observational statements. This particular experience, where me as a parent who is being so flippin' cognizant about how do I help my kid have this big meltdown without um invalidating it, but then also helping her to, like, navigate through it while also understanding brain development. Chick can't do that real well. Impulse control, nana. Like, we think about how that particular situation was handled in all the generations prior. It's evolved. So minimizing becomes woven into the culture. Okay. And not because people don't care, but because the system we're living in just didn't always allow space for these feelings, and nowadays that's what we're doing. We're trying to allow for more feelings and understand how we can do that while also being all kinds of just messy and trying to figure out attachment styles as it is. It's hard work. And so when you understand that about all of this stuff that I'm musing over, we can look at it and it softens, right? So because you can hold on to two truths at once. Minimizing was protection and protective, but it can also be limiting. And so from that place, you're not just reacting to the pattern anymore, you're actually seeing it. And when you see it clearly, you can begin to choose differently. And here's where I would like to shift something, because minimizing isn't always something we need to get rid of right away. Right. And in fact, I don't even think we need to get rid of it. I think that we need to utilize it in its appropriate manner, that minimizing can be a first step. So when something happens that feels really overwhelming, too big, too fast, too much for the system to fully process, we will instinctively make it smaller. So turning a boulder into a pebble, not because it is small, but because that's what will allow us to hold on to it, to look at it without being consumed by it. And there's a lot of wisdom in being able to do that, because before we can understand and experience, we need to be able to be with it. And minimizing is an early form, and it can help create just enough distance for us to be able to be with it. And then something also to note, we cannot minimize the energetic blueprint of the experience. So if it was a boulder, that the aura, if you will, that imprint of what that boulder is, that doesn't change even if you break it down to a pebble. So because even if the mind says it wasn't that bad, like the mind is saying that, the body, the nervous system, all of that does not jive with that statement, because the body will remember. It's very well known. Vessel van der Kolk's body keeps a score. Like this kind of stuff is what I'm talking about. So the nervous system will encode that energetic blueprint, the resonance of that moment. It still exists within your internal world. So I call it your resonance matrix, and we have these decade rings, and on those decade rings, we have these echo markers, and they live on that resonance matrix. And so where the work can begin to shift is not focusing, not forcing it to be bigger than it is, but just kind of allowing it to be honest. So, because the goal is not to stay in the pebble, the goal is not to hold on to the pebble and collect a bunch of flipping pebbles. And it's not about jumping straight back into a boulder. What we want to do is we want to sit with the pebble, which I would call the echo marker, and we can understand it and what is actually being held here. So, what meaning did I make? What did my system learn? What did I have to do to adapt? We're looking at that. We're looking at what this echo marker pebble, like the resonance, the frequency it's putting out in your system. And as you begin to accept the reality of its impact without minimizing and without overwhelming yourself, a beautiful shift happens. And you can then change the resonance of that experience. So the pebble or the echo marker, it carried all of this distortion, tension, survival energy. Like I just visualize this, red flashy, like as fast as you can, blinking light, like meh, meh, meh. I look at that as that's the pebble, that's the echo marker, and it's just pushing out this like dissonance, right? And even though it's small and you're like, it's just a small little red light, it's still putting out that huge frequency of what that energetic imprint was. And that's going to affect like you and how you relate to things and stuff like that. So the echo marker, when you can sit with it and like help reprogram it and change the frequency of it, all of a sudden it slows down, the color changes. You can come back into alignment with it. You come back to your core, which I call the atrium. And this is what reprogramming can look like. So we're not erasing the experience. We're also not pretending it didn't happen. And we're allowing the energetic imprint to shift how it resonates within us. So we're not changing the size of it. We're just changing how we interact with that impactful moment. So a lot to kind of just mull over and chew. So the pebble isn't something you push away because it will quietly weigh on you because energetically it's much bigger. So we want to sit and have a point of understanding so we can then have a good integration. And then after you do that, then we're no longer minimizing. We're not feeling overwhelmed. And we're shifting the relationship that we have with this moment. And I really want to offer a quick clarification here. So this isn't about minimizing everyday inconveniences or momentary stressors. We all naturally move through small frustrations. We don't need to have deep processing for that. So when I'm speaking right now, I'm speaking about the experiences that created an emotional or somatic imprint, the kind of moments that influence your nervous system, your beliefs, your sense of self over time. And that could even be like when you have an argument with your spouse. Even though the argument itself might have been minuscule, it like reverberated. And that energetic imprint is holding so much other things with it, even though you can dumb it down and be like, oh, it was nothing. We were just fighting about, the fact that I had to carry the groceries in by myself. When really what that energetic imprint of that pebble was is, I am not feeling seen and supported, but we've minimized the experience like really far down. So again, that in itself, though sounds small, it's not, but that's not an everyday inconvenience. Okay. Like when I think of everyday inconvenience, I'm thinking you're having like road rage. Like you're just like, oh man, like this guy's going so slow, like things of that nature. So just being able to discern is really important on what we call these pebbles or echo markers. So as we close today, I'm going to invite you again for a reflection. Now that I have just talked in this little orbit about minimizing, I really urge you to go read my blog. It's probably way better organized. But ask yourself, what might I be minimizing in my life right now? What and how has it actually affected me? And what would it look like to hold that experience without dismissing the impact it had on me? And if it feels supportive, maybe take some time to journal. See what comes up with that. No pressure, no judgment, just curiosity. Exploring these statements. What have I been minimizing? And just see where that takes you. Where did I learn to do this? That's a good one. Thinking about how, where did I learn to dumb down this particular situation? And what would it feel like to honor my experience without exaggerating or dismissing it? So if something came up for you in this episode, I always want to hear from you. What was your pebble? What shifted you? And you can share your thoughts with me through my website or on my social medias. This space is meant to be shared, so not held alone. Thank you so much. If this episode resonated with you, please know this. You're not alone. You're not too much. You don't have to minimize everything and dismiss it. Your system has carried you farther than you may realize. And I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And until next time, you know what I'm going to say. You, yes, you are everything and nothing less. Thank you for joining me today on the LCMHC Mystic Musings. If this musing resonated, follow the podcast wherever you listen, share it, get it out there, and you can connect with me at my website, workingwithsacredhealing.com, or social medias at the LCMHC Mystic. So much gratitude, so much love, and thank you from this corner of this little circle of the internet. Big